Hello, my quilting friends. I'm Leah Day, a professional quilter, author, and online teacher. And this podcast is all about quilting, running a creative business, and balancing our busy hands with our busy lives. You can find the episode show notes and links to everything mentioned in this podcast at leahday.com. Enjoy the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Welcome to episode 12 of the podcast. I'm super excited. Today is a very big day. I've got Nathan Erznosdik from Grace Company. He's going to be on the show today, and we're going to be talking about quilting frames. So Grace Company makes hand quilting frames, domestic sewing machine frames, so that you could take, your little domestic sewing machine and put it on a quilting frame. And then all the way up to long arm quilting frames and long arm machines. So we're going to be talking about that transition of how you go from a domestic machine, what I've been quilting on for years, and transition up to a big long arm. And this is something that I'm really interested in because I'm planning on making this transition this year. I'm not planning on stopping my videos. I'm always going to shoot videos on home sewing machines, but I'm wanting to add to my repertoire. I'm wanting to add to my plate a little bit here and start shooting some videos on long arms as well. So I'm going to be working with Grace. They have sent me a little long arm. It is the Grace Unique 14 Plus. And so that is what I'm working on. Upstairs, it's in my table mounted, I have it set up as a table mounted machine right now. And I've really enjoyed playing on this. And we're actually going to start a new series called Set Down Quilting Sunday. So every Sunday I'm going to come out with a video and it's going to be on this machine. And it's just about that transition. Why would you want to go to a long arm? Why would you want to put it in a table? And what can you do with it? And how is it better? And how is, in some ways, it's not as good? Some things that I miss, when I'm quilting on it, like, the ability to do a zigzag stitch. You can't do that with a long arm. So I really am looking forward to this whole series, and working with Grace Company is a really excellent opportunity because they're such an awesome company. And we've had multiple talks, kind of met up at Quilt Market, and I just feel like they're big enough that they are able to kind of put ideas into action, but small enough where I feel like people are being heard. So that when you want something, if you have an idea and you're like, hey, could you make this for me? Or do you think this could be a cool feature we add? That they would actually go and build that and go and do that. And I really value that in a quilting company. And just a little bit I post about this, everyone that I've heard from has said just what excellent customer service Grace Company has. So that's really wonderful to hear as well. So be looking forward to this really awesome interview. I'm super excited about it. And now for a few updates about what's going on around the house. We have just launched our Dresden plate template set, super exciting, and it's going very, very well. Now this week it is on sale, $14 off, so you can pick up a set. It's a 10-piece set, and it has 6 Dresden petals, so you cut 6 different types of Dresdens, and 4 circle templates, so 10 pieces total, and you can get that for $45.99 right now. And that discount's going to last until January 30th. And then it's going to go away. So act now. Come and pick it up. You can come and find it at leahday.com/Dresden plate. And I'm super excited about it because just the possibilities of how many plates you can cut. I haven't even scratched the surface, and I kind of just handed the templates and a whole lot of fabric to Dad this week and said, go cut a lot of stuff and have fun, go play. Like, I don't have time right this second to do it. I'm writing patterns and, furiously trying to get lots of things done this week. So Dad has been downstairs having all the fun and cutting out all these Dresdens, and they're so funky, like all the different things that you can do with them. So I'm really looking forward to shooting more videos on those and more how-tos. Our next block for the machine quilting block party is cut with template number 1. And so that's another awesome opportunity just to teach and share new things about making Dresden plates. And then the cool extra thing that they can do is they can also be used for ruler quilting on your home machine. And that's something I did a tutorial with Stephanie Sebbing last week. She pieced a quilt and taught a tutorial, and then I took it and quilted it using these rulers, and it worked really, really good. So I'm really excited not just to be digging into Dresden plates, but also to be digging into ruler work quilting. This is something that I've wanted to get into and I've wanted to be teaching, and it's kind of like, stuff has just always kind of gotten in my way. And this year I put my foot down and said, no, I'm going to make it part of the machine quilting block party. Then I'll be forced I'll be forced to figure it out and learn how to do it. And I'll be learning it right alongside you guys. So that's going to be really fun. So that's pretty much it for the updates around the house. The sponsor for the show is our Dresden Plate templates. So come and check them out at leahday.com/Dresden Plate. And now here's the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with Nathan Erznosnik from Grace Company. So why don't you start out the show by sharing a little bit about Grace Company and what you guys do?
Wonderful. Thank you. First, Leah, I appreciate being able to have this conversation with you. Grace Company has been around for a little over 30 years, and brief history, we started with hand quilting frame. To be honest with you, we still are very involved with hoops and larger no-based frame systems. In fact, we're really one of the only ones left that provide these type of products. And so through the evolution of time, we've had customers continue to want and need really products to help make quilting easier. And so we've taken those challenges on, and we moved to machine quilting frames here about 16 years ago, which a lot of people are familiar with the Grace frames. And from there, again, meeting the demands of people, have moved into making mid-arm sewing machines and now currently long-arm sewing machines.
Excellent. So let's talk about the machine quilting frames. How do they work exactly? Because I think there's a lot of quilters out there that have only ever seen a home sewing machine, and even just the idea of a frame looks kind of complicated and a little intimidating. So if you could just break that down, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Maybe if I can start off, I always like to help people envision, in this world of quilting, somebody knows a friend or has a friend or has been in a store or they've seen one of these longer machines, and they can be anywhere from a home, a little small mid-arm at 9 inches, maybe known as a Juki or Janome, everybody has a line, and they expand clear out to 30 inches. And so this process of what we call mid-arm or long-arm quilting on a frame, what it does is it transitions from the home sewer, the home quilter, sitting down and having to manage bulks of fabric, depending on the size of quilt. I'm pretty sure anybody listening now would be thinking about doing their twin size quilt or their queen. And I know that when the project's done, I have a lot of people tell me that their body physically is a little sore from having to roll and push and manipulate and puddle their fabric. So what the concept of the frames are is to take and help hold that fabric off of you and off of a table, and it scrolls around rails. And what that does, it provides a no-based system, which is a big, huge plus for most people. So there's none of this laying out and trying to lay all 3 layers and pin it or spray baste it. That all goes away, and you simply lay the backing and roll it onto a rail. Then you throw your batting on top of that and lay your top fabric or your pieced quilt on. And honestly, one of the most impressive things is when people walk up to these frames at different sizes and they put their hands up onto a machine. The concept difference is that the machine literally glides across the fabric surface. And that's a little bit of a difference versus trying to push the fabric through the throat. And again, you can think about that if you're sitting down and you're using your hands, and, sometimes that's where you end up with some of the extra pressure in your wrist and your arms as you're trying to shift and manipulate the wad of fabric. What we do is we end up moving away from that to simply glide a machine with a couple handles with our fingertips over the surface. And that's been one of the biggest pluses that we find when people, as they've been at home quilting, they'll have I've had people with 50-piece tops, in their homes needing to be done, and they've gone through a couple on their machine, but it's very taxing. And then the other side of that comes out as well. Have somebody do it. Some people will love completing their own projects, and then the other side is there's a potential financial cost to letting somebody else complete those for you. So that's kind of one of the concepts that we really wanted to do with making these machine quilting frames, is taking and creating something that allowed the consumers to take some of their home machines potentially and placing them on there, or buying combos that then really simplify the quilting experience, allowing them to complete more of that process on their own.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you're really being specific about, like, you don't have to have a long arm to use a rail. Is that right? You could use a regular home sewing machine to do this.
That is absolutely a true statement. In the industry, we've seen a shift in this over the last probably 6 years. But our bread and butter, our customers, the people who have helped Grace Company become who we are literally the home quilter, who has been sitting down and quilting and sewing, and has really been looking for a tool to transition or to make that easier. Normally, it's a budget-minded person, someone who really loves completing their own projects. And so what we've done is we have several frames that are out there, specifically one of our entry-level frames, what we call SR2, kind of getting a short name, start right, getting started right. A little queen-size frame that retails for $1,000 that lets you set any machine literally on the surface of the carriage, and then that carriage can then be moved around over the surface of the fabric. Now, granted, there are a few ideal home machines that work with that. If you use one that's compatible with our stitch regulator, then you can also add stitch regulation to that. But that queen frame, we have other frames that move into the king size, our GQ frame, which in short terms is the Grace Quilting frame. So not necessarily innovative, but we call it the GQ frame. Is a metal frame that helps take on some of those higher end professional features. It can be built at 5 or 10 foot, and then you can add 2 feet to that to go up to 12 foot. Again, you can start with a home machine, setting it on the carriage and allowing that home machine to be moved and dragged across the surface. Later on, that same type of a system, you can then add a 15-inch mid-arm or up to an 18-inch machine on that type of a frame. Again, our concept, if I were to tell you, has been to consumerize what the professionals have done. And so what that means is, one, make it simple enough that you can put this together in your home. You can put the fabric on this, and so you have the instructions and the videos to help walk you through that. And at the end of the day, that you'll find success once you put your fabric on there to start moving through and start quilting it so that you actually complete projects. And, something that can start as low as $1,000 instead of something out there that you might hear when you talk about long arms between $8,000 and $15,000.
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of kept me in the home sewing machine on a table mounted machine for so long, was because I was so intimidated by the price. And it's really a relief to hear that there are actual, relatively inexpensive. I mean, to different people, that's not inexpensive. $1,000 is a lot of money, but in comparison to everything else out there, that's actually quite reasonable and a good first step to getting started on a long arm. So I thought that was really interesting what you said about the GQ frame. So you could put like a home sewing machine on it first, and then in a few years, let's say you were kind of getting tired of that, you could then buy a long arm and put a long arm on that same frame. You wouldn't have to tear that frame down and sell it or get rid of it. You could use the same frame for 2 different machines.
That is absolutely correct. It's an interesting piece. This is part of how I operate, and as I talk with different quilters and as we even talk with dealers in the industry, we don't like to invest in something and then later on feel that investment has to be thrown away or given away. And in our mindset, really what we have attempted to do, and we feel that we've done this well, is provide what we call an entry point at whatever budget you have. And an example to that would be one of the great machines to put on our frames to start with would be like a little Juki has back in the past in '98, and they moved to 2000, 2010, and now they call it the QBP Mini. Janome has a 1600, Brother has a 1500. These different machines are little 9-inch machines that you can simply sit on here, and they have been common, so there are people who have those. But where I'm going is if you can start with the machine and simply set it on, and you say I've got $1,000 to start, and we can start with a queen frame, that is a place to enter. And I want to throw this out there. I have told people as well, there is a great secondary market out there with people who have moved to Longarms, and I have seen frames. A lot of them are Grace frames, which we still support. Some of them might not be, but we encourage people to start really where you can. And I've seen them go used with frames from about 600 to 1,000, even with the machine. But we have those obviously new. That GQ frame you're talking about, so when we start with the home machine, because of the structure, what that means is when we become more proficient, or I'm now more capable, or I want to move a machine faster because now I've experienced this over a period of time, we find that consumers do want the next step. What they do want to do is, boy, I would like to complete larger blocks. I would like to sew more at the same time. And so then they start looking at what is that next level? What is the next machine that I might be able to move to? That's why we created our Unique 14 Plus machine. It's actually a 15-inch machine. And this was to fill the stopgap in between the big professional machines and the smaller home machines. A machine like that retails at right around $39.99, so just under $4,000. So thus again, starting either with the SR2 or that GQ frame I'm mentioning, once you find that you're ready and you've moved past the experience of a home machine, you can then take a machine like this mid-arm and simply literally place it on the carriage that currently exists with that system, and then you've now expanded your throat size, the speed at which you operate, and even the smoothness at which that system can be managed. An item like that does have the stitch regulation built in. So at that next level of $4,000, you're going to get higher speeds, more accurate stitching, built-in stitch regulation, and multiple functions that you would also see on some of those high-end ones. The larger M-class bobbins that hold 3 times as much thread as most home machines do, but yet you get conveniences like the built-in bobbin winder on the top, so that you still feel that there is a relationship between what you have experienced while sitting down, and now as you move that to the next level. And again, you kind of mentioned that we can go past that. As I said, we can go out to 18 inches, and there are several machines out there in the industry that can be placed on top of this system as well, and partnered up with it.
Yeah, and you guys build a lot of frames for other people, right? So a lot of these frames that we're seeing from Brother and Juki and different companies are actually built by Grace.
They are. I kind of chuckle a little bit. Some people know that. We wish we probably would have done, honestly, a better job at branding and letting people know that we were really trying to drive the entire industry forward. Again, that's been one of our goals, is to really help create products that solve problems and then bring them out at prices that let more people become a part of this. A little sidetrack, but Jim, our owner, it's founded this company, and the name of the company is Grace, and that is his mother's name, and she encouraged him and started out with the hand quilting frames because she used to work at a local store called Mormon Handicraft, and people were coming in wanting solutions, and she approached her son and said, hey, how about if you look at designing a frame that people can quilt on that would solve the basting problem, etc. And so she was a big encouragement, and that's part of what's continued to drive us to innovate in this industry over the last several, over 30 years, and more so with the machine quilting frames over the last 16. And so that did allow us to start doing business with Handy Quilter, which we manufactured one of the first ones, and now they've licensed some of that, and they're manufacturing their own. We currently do the Juki frame. We designed the Tin Lizzie Phoenix frame, and now they're able to manufacture that on their own. And we did one for Janome, and we make the Momentum for Baby Lock, and we again, an easy one to see and say, wow, that really solves a need in the market was this hoop frame that we have, and we call it zone-to-zone quilting because some people just don't have space in order to put these longer systems. And so we came out, and I kind of chuckle a little bit about this one because I've been with Grace for 11 years, and our owner, when I was hired, he said, hey, we need to solve this problem with people not having enough room. How do we give them a tool that can do the majority of the functions that these big professional machines can do, but at a much smaller space? And I'll tell you, it hurt my head because he'd bring it up every year, and we tried to do some things, and we could not solve it. And so again, very excited to continue to innovate. That Brother hoop frame is one of our newest ones here, a little over a year and a half out there. But again, we really tried to be a part of the industry by solving problems and creating products that help the quilters out there find more success with quilting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned space being an issue because it's a big issue for me too. What is the smallest frame? Is it that Brother frame that's the smallest, and what footprint does it take up?
That is a great question. So, as you're familiar, and you've been doing a lot of quilting in sitting down, you can buy sit-down tables, and you're now manipulating the fabric. And so then we say, what would be maybe a frame, in essence, so that if we can do a no-based process, a lot of the frames that we've manufactured can be built at different sizes. What we always tell people is when you buy the frame, you can only do projects that are smaller than the size the frame is set up in. So our little SR2 frame, our little SR2 that I refer to that can go to queen size, you can build it at half of the size, but mind you, instead of being built with an 88 quiltable inch space, you cut that in half. You would then have 44. So people would need to decide, do I need or will I do projects bigger than 44 inches? If so, do I have space to place a queen size or maybe the GQ frame, a king size frame in there? The nice thing again is once it's built, you can always do anything smaller than that. Again, one of those things that people look at as they've moved and looking at the SR2, and I'm going to kind of bring us into this, so let me work through this here for a minute. One of the things that we find is that when people look and they say, oh, maybe the 44 inches, or I will do projects that are larger than 44, they then can decide if they have a full room or full space to build like the SR2 at its full size. The nice thing about these frames is once they're built at their full size, you can actually complete any project smaller than the size the frame's set up in. With that being the case, though, like yourself, Leah, if there is a limitation to space, really one of the only other main options out there would be like the Brother frame. The Brother hoop frame gives you the conveniences of gliding the machine over the fabric without the need to be limited to the size of the frame. So as I was mentioning before, if I have a frame set up at half size, you can only do projects that are smaller than whatever that size frame is. The Brother frame does not have that limitation because the fabric actually floats on top of the frame surface and is moved across left and right and then rolled into the machine's throat. So that is a great option outside of the sit down, or if you're looking and feeling that you don't have room for a full queen or king size frame, that Brother frame does give you an opportunity to do any size project. So there is no limit within a 3x5 footprint. So
Excellent, excellent. And so the Brother frame, from what I understand, this is just, based on really quick checking it out at a show, you do have to have that one basted, like your quilt basted before you put it on. Is that correct?
that is correct. On that frame, because the fabric is being moved around or over it, there would be, and I should say you can pre-baste if you want. Again, knowing that that was potentially a problem with that frame, we really tried to look at solving that. We actually provide a unique, what we call soft rail, which is a leader cloth that has a rolled loop at the top of it that lets you pin your backing. And the testing that we've done here, when we brought in a couple professional quilters, once we pinned across the top, which you have to do on all the frames, and you lined your fabrics up, we found that because there was this soft rail that you rolled the fabric up into, once you started moving and migrating the fabric across the frame, we found that it actually moved very, very well together, and it was a little bit more surprising than we were anticipating. It worked out better than we thought that we were going to be able to get it. Some people still prefer to baste, but we find that based on the quilt, our testing was done with full king size quilts, that you can actually migrate through that entire one. Every now and then you might fluff your top and your batting just to make sure that they all line up, but that brother frame actually has ratcheting rails and fingers that kind of help pull that back fabric to create the tension, which then allows you to move your upper layers a little bit more easier.
Excellent. That's so good to know, because I don't know about you, but there's so many quilters, me included. Basting is like the least enjoyed part of the process. It's just always kind of drudgery. So anything that makes that faster and easier is always a nice thing.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, walking a quilter through, so someone that, has a home sewing machine and gives a frame a try, and then kind of wants to get into the long arm area and try that out. What are some things unique to long arms that a home sewing machine doesn't have that will really get quilters excited about this? Like, I know there's some things that you can do on the back of the machine, not just the front, right?
That is a great point, and maybe a couple things that I can share for people to kind of envision as they try to decide part of what you end up getting as you move into these long arms versus the home sewing machines. If I were to kind of start off from all that, one of the biggest things that you will find is that once somebody transitions to a frame, and that doesn't really matter, any frame out there, is they always think, oh, I'm going to go a little bit slower because they're used to pushing fabric. We find that people very, very quickly start moving machines much quicker across the surface of the fabric. What that will do is just means I'm getting my projects done in less time, or I'm able to do just more with less time as well. So they start looking at that. And so what you find on the machines is the bigger the machines, the more expensive. You start adding additional components like faster speeds again, bigger areas of space that you're going to be able to quilt in. And then again, what we found, as you're mentioning, there might be other things that you can do from the back with rear handles or lasers that you can attach to use as a stylus to trace. Because now, what I like to think about is if you're to take a pen in your hand, everybody take a pen in your hand and you hold this in the hand that you write on. I'm right-handed, so I hold this pen in my right hand. And what I would ask everybody to do is take that pen and then move it to your opposite hand. And what I would challenge you to do is to take that pen and place it on a piece of paper, but you cannot move that pen. Now with the hand which I write with, which would be my right hand, try to move a sheet of paper under your pen and sign your name. You will find that process is backwards, because literally moving and shifting the paper underneath the pen is backwards. That's what we do when we're sitting down and quilting. What we find is that when people move that pen back into their right hand, and I ask you to sign your name, very quickly you can quickly sign your name. Well, once you step in front of a machine that now floats across the surface of the fabric, you are literally drawing on your fabric. And what we find is there's this next level of freedom that people feel, and there's this level of comfort, because we've been signing, we've been drawing, we've been writing our entire life, and so there tends to be this connection that makes them feel more comfortable. And so the reason I say that is, what can they expect if they move to long arms? First and foremost is you're going to find that there is an immediate comfort. And people say, well, I don't know if I want to have to become professional, or how much time will it take for me to get to be really experienced. And so the reason I tell you the story is the rear handlebars or lasers, there are plastic templates that can be placed on the back side of the frame surface. And these items have been created to make it easier for consumers to transition to long arm quilting. Plastic templates have a stylus, a steel pin that would go down into a cut groove, and if I'm at the back of the frame with the handlebars, I can turn it on. I now do not have to know how to quilt. I can simply drop that steel pin into a groove and move that across the frame, and it will follow the path that groove is doing. And so I can now complete quilts literally without not having learned a stitch about freehand quilting in my entire life. And again, so tools have been created to try to help transition people, and past that you can also do automation. But really we find that people from a budget will decide where they're going to enter, what different kind of tools like lasers to trace pouncing or lasers to trace paper pantographs or plastic templates might they want to buy. And then they find that they're going to be more successful quicker. And then they enjoy it, and therefore they're going to be completing more quilts. And I always tease people, Leah, you probably found this out. As soon as you started quilting and you started finding that there was some fun behind this, your fabric budget had to increase. And I'm guessing you've got a lot of fabric out there. All I know is Mark Martin here, one of our sales managers, his wife bought a frame, and I said, I don't know if you're prepared, but you better know that you're going to be getting it, and your wife will be spending a lot more money on fabric, because that's the nature. You're going to find that you're going to be able to get more done in less time, and you're going to love doing it.
Absolutely. And I think that's really so many quilters' goals. It's definitely one of my goals this year, is to look at ways to work simpler and to work quicker. And, it's going back to what we talked about at the beginning of this talk, just moving the fabric under the needle is always going to feel like the opposite, kind of the opposite in a not natural direction. And it's also always going to be a push-pull. I've done this for years, and I know that. And I know if I quilt a long period of time during the day, I'm going to feel it the next day. And so for me personally, it's always looking at, how do we continue to grow and change with this and become better quilters and make more quilts? That's kind of the point. I've felt a resistance personally to move to a Longarms just simply because this is where so many people start, is on a home sewing machine. But I actually, this is kind of a funny little story. Back in the day, I think this was maybe 2010, I wrote an article that was like 7 reasons why I don't want or need a long arm. And I guess I need to go and update that, because now 7 years later, I can write an article, 7 reasons why I do want a long arm, because it's taken that much time, I think, for the industry to mature, for the prices to come down, and, for me to look at it and say, this has a place, and there's definitely room for quilters to come into this and it not be like $15,000 or $18,000. And just speaking of price, a basic entry-level system. So let's say someone wants to go ahead and go with the Qnique. I'm really enjoying my Qnique on the table-mounted. I'm setting it up as a table-mounted machine right now. But let's say someone wanted to get that and put it on a frame. What are we talking price-wise for something like that?
That's a great question. I want to just kind of share a couple things. One of the first things, just so you know, is the system that you have. Again, we wanted to help individuals that were at home and really were looking to experience a little bit more space. We've made our system so that you can actually start on a table. There's an upgrade kit that will allow you to put that onto a frame later as well. But if we were to look at somebody getting into the industry, somebody just really saying, Nathan, I want to start with one of these mid-arm machines and I'm wanting to put a system together, I would tell you is that the retail starting price for a fully stitch regulated machine, okay, that has the bigger M-class bobbins and SR Qnique 14 plus machine, it's a 15-inch on the SR2 frame. The standard MSRP would be $49.99, so just under $5,000. I find that dealers are selling that for less, and I've seen it for quite a bit less at shows. And so I know that there are some very reasonable prices that are somewhere between that $4,000 and $5,000 range for what I call a queen-size frame and a fully functional, really mid-arm professional machine. Which is our Qnique machine. The next level you're going to find is taking that same 15-inch machine and placing it onto a 10-foot or / 12-foot frame, so really the next full kind of a professional frame out there. And you're looking at starting into that at a retail right around $6,300, so $6,299. If you were to, that's at the 10-footer, then you could add the extension of the extra 2 feet, which would add about another $500. We have also just launched a 21-inch machine. And as a really quick note, we are trying to, our goal is to provide what we're calling a QVE experience, a quality value experience. And so what we're trying to do is to bring into this market a product that has the type of features, the type of functions that you're going to find. And we're not trying to be everything. We're not going to be the fastest. We're not going to be the fanciest. But I'll tell you, dollar to dollar, we will absolutely provide you with the most value on the machine. So our 21-inch machine on an 8-foot frame, full metal professional frame, would be in the market for right around about $7,400, and that's just full list price. And you would be looking at a full 10-foot frame on that one for right around the $8,000 mark. What I would tell you is that other machines at 18 inches start between the 9 and 12. So what we're proposing is a 21-inch machine that puts you into this market at under 8. And that's where you would kind of start finding some stepping stones as far as prices.
Excellent. And I think, that's a really great place to know. I mean, I know that I have spent $5,000 on a regular home sewing machine before. So, it was a Janome machine that I purchased once it was just a regular 13-inch machine. And it didn't have a frame. It didn't have any of those things. So I think price-wise, a lot of our home sewing machines have gotten bigger and more complicated, and they're adding embroidery and all this other stuff. But if you really just want to quilt, it's good to know that there's other options that you could get a frame plus a long arm for the same price.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for joining me today and telling us more about Grace Company and the different products that you offer. Can you just tell us where people can find you and learn more about your machines?
Absolutely. We're found in all of our products are listed on our website at www.graceframe.com, and that's GRACEFRAME.com. That is our main website. If people are interested and want to look at the quilters, our long arm and our mid arm quilters, they have a unique name. We call them Qunique, which is really unique quilting, kind of Qunique, which is www.Qunique, which is sorry, I'm not spelling that right, www.QNIQUE quilter, so QUILTER.com, so QuniqueQuilter.com, QuniqueQuilter.com, and that really is a combination between both our sites. And then we're open Monday through Friday, Mountain Standard Time, 1-800-264-0644. Again, 1-800-264-0644. We have a lot of people requesting catalogs that on both our automation, our long arm sewing machines, our frames, and our cutting tools. And so all that can be seen at those locations. And then we will be actually at MQX this year, which is a first for us. We're going to be out at the Virginia Hampton Mancuso show, which is a first for us also, along with the Chicago quilting show that we have in April. So there's a few new events we've added to try to put our names out there a little bit more.
Excellent, excellent. So I hope everybody will come and see you at those shows. And if you're interested, check them out at graceframe.com. So I'll make sure to link all that up. And thank you again, Nathan, for coming on the show. I'm really excited about quilting on my Qunique and transitioning this year into maybe putting it on a frame too.
Wonderful. Thank you again for all your time.
So that's it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the Dresden Plate template set and the really awesome sale we're running right now, check that out at leahday.com/Dresden Plate. Until next time, let's go quilt.